Hello Guardians, ISO here. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about an interesting side character I've been following for a while. This character doesn't appear in-game, you never meet her, and we don't even know what she looks like. But she appears a few times in the written lore for Destiny. Her name is Sola Scath. This warlock's quotes act as the flavor text for some Trials of Osiris bounties related to using void weapons and void damage, so it can be assumed that she favors being a Voidwalker warlock. The few times she does appear in lore, she's also using the Voidwalker subclass, so this is further cemented. But the bounty flavor text quotes also hint at something sinister below the surface. The biggest story involving Sola comes from the lore of various weapons earned during the Trials of Osiris. This first excerpt comes from the Summoner, and actually details one team getting ready for a match of trials. She awaited signal lock, hands loosely bent around flight sticks, sun to her back. Treston's sight sank into stupor and stretched far across the outshined lights of distant possibilities. Flanking starlight pushed her jump ship's shadow outward into space. It was what it was, and nothing more. Mercury hung beneath, buried in a storm of solar wind like a dark pit enveloped by ripe flesh. She hadn't returned in years. Previous iterations of trials and constant exposure to the Crucible had sated her curiosities of quietus. None of that mattered anymore. Not after the moon. It was over. Finality was coming. Treston's return was a pretense for preparation, a living funeral to find conclusion on one's own terms. She'd begun to see the sense concealed in wanton disassociation, the seriousness underneath the dressings of the menagerie, the truth in the word ringing through its halls. It was over. Time to make peace. Saint 14 is going to be watching us. No pressure. Sadij twisted a faded purple ribbon through the plate of his gauntlet and flexed his fingers. No pressure at all. Treston mouthed the words, barely producing a sound before Yara's voice cut into the chatter. Look alive, team. We are the thin line drawn before the darkness. We are Guardians. No holding back. Thin. A line to be swallowed in scope. No holding back. Burning Shrine. Lock. Transmat firing. The next piece, from Tomorrow's Answer, details their defeat during the round, and their encounter with Sola on the enemy team. Yara slammed a rocket into her launcher. These crates really skimp on quantity. Sadij is down, Treston said to Yara. This one's alone. The words had barely escaped her when a warlock brimming with void light nova-warped past them. Yara turned and launched a rocket over Treston's head. The opposing warlock concentrated her aura of void energy into her hand and unleashed a supernova blast. The two projectiles collided. Void and flame ripped through each other and burst outward, sending all three fighters in different directions. Yara groaned as her visor began to clear. Her head sang a familiar tune of disoriented pounding and auto-rifle fire. Fresh blood ran from rigid shrapnel protruding from her leg. Treston, check in. No answer. Yara reached blindly through dust and particulate to recover her weapon, but found only scattered bits of stone and debris. Static streaked through her visor, throwing heat signatures directly in front of her through the swirling dust. She knocked the side of her visor to clear the interference. A violet shockwave pushed away the dust. Treston knelt a few paces away, beaten. The warlock bent her glowing hand into Treston's chestplate, lodging a vortex grenade into her armor. Yara met her eyes and saw the void overtake her. She did not hear the scream, or the splitting armor. She only saw flickers of Treston break apart and scatter as the vortex ate away at her. Yara shook the shock hold on her mind and pulled her sidearm. She snap-fired a round into the warlock's shoulder. The warlock recoiled from the force and whipped an open palm of malformed void at Yara, releasing unstable energy that shattered the pistol's frame into ragged scraps. No more of that. That was cruel. She didn't deserve... None of us deserve. It's about what you get. The warlock smiled and raised a hand of gnarled void. Brace yourself. Sola's plan comes to fruition in the lore from the weapon, the Scholar. Sola could feel the light twisting from her prey's core. She jerked her hand, which dripped with hungry power, and plucked at something deeper. Sola worked her power between her prey's ribs and felt them give way. She dug in spite of the pleas, feeling for a grip to hoist their light to the surface and find what hid underneath. So, Sola's intent bit deeper, malleable claws that flexed against her prey's light. They probed through blood and muscle to an umbral center. It's within you, too. Her prey's scream was silenced as a shot rang out from over Sola's shoulder. It struck her opponent squarely in the temple, and the body collapsed. Sola's perverse light dissipated. What the hell was that? Crimic 5 lashed into her ear. Before she could answer, Saint 14's voice boomed through the arena's audio channel. Enough! Sola took a step back. A transmat deployment fired behind her. She turned, perplexed at the massive armored figure that now stood before her. I do not know what strange light you are weaving, Warlock, but this is too far. I didn't realize Trials had gone soft. No. Your victory stands. This is not the Crucible. There is no punishment, but I will not allow needless torture of a Guardian. Isn't Guardian-on-Guardian violence the point? Strength through death. You are no Guardian. Saint turned away from Sola and looked to Crimic 5 as he approached. I hope you know what company you keep. Crimic 5 slung his rifle and pierced Sola's visor with livid eyes. He knelt and extended a hand to the broken Guardian's ghost. I'm not a party to this. Not my style. Crimic's eyes scanned the grotesque scene. I'm sorry I wasn't faster. Sola could feel Saint 14's light eclipse her own. His hand clenched into a fist. She stifled as much of her temper as she could muster. Fine. You're as good as dead anyway. Good luck with your war. Sola turned to leave. Saint raised his hand to a swatch mark on his helm. Geppetto, recall me and get these fighters back on their feet. This match is over. Sola had been corrupted by the darkness. During these matches, she's still using Void Light, the light of the Traveler, but she clearly holds the darkness within her. And she's been scouring Trials of Osiris matches, perhaps even Standard Crucible, looking for others like her, looking metaphysically into their core in search of something dark. These lore entries came out during the Season of the Worthy at the beginning of spring in 2020, but the Darkness-based subclasses didn't come out until winter of 2020, so this shows the amount of foreshadowing that was going into place for these lore entries. She got her hands on the Darkness before the Vanguard were even made aware of its presence on Europa, and probably made contact with it on that icy moon. We know that she eventually did find other Guardians like herself, Guardians that had been touched by the Darkness. She attempted to ferry them somewhere, to a place that we probably know now as Europa, so that she could train in their powers of the Darkness there. But she was caught. In the lore entry for Temptation's Hook, we see that she's been tracked down by Aunor, everyone's favorite member of the Praxic Order, and it doesn't end well. You ferried a Lightbearer to the outer system, Aunor says and cocks the hammer on her weapon. They did not return with you. I learned the secret. The one your hounds have hidden away in that quaint little vault. Sola smiled red through split lips. You're on the losing side. Do you think you have nothing to lose, or that I wouldn't take it from you? You are sorely and soon to be regretfully mistaken. Sola spits in Aunor's face. You have limits. You have masters. A twisted light shimmers in Sola's hand as she moves to attack. Enjoy hanging to death in your strings! Aunor pulls the trigger unflinchingly. Sola drops. Disgrace of a warlock. Sola's ghost hangs motionless in the air beside her dead charge. A breeze rustles char from the patches of blackened grass around them. Her iris flicks next to the two Praxic watchdogs, the warlock who pulled the trigger, and the Titan partner who shakes a recent death from his bones. Aunor turns to her colleague. Should we have her resurrected and ask again? The Titan wipes blood from his chest plate as his ghost patches his armor. A fresh bullet hole sits above his heart. No, I think she made herself clear the first time. Sola's ghost pipes up. Who says I would? You have nothing to fear, little light. Your guardian is touched. We're here to help. You mean you're here to put us down? Not presently. Give us the coordinates of your heading, then you'll be escorted to the city in peace. You know. If you didn't, you wouldn't be here. We've tracked the gravitational disturbances, yes. The Warmind had revealed the anomaly was moving through the outer system. But you know that, and you know how to find it. The ghost mimics a spit noise. Run back to your quiet, traveler. I won't be ordered around anymore. Anor's body deflates as she holsters her weapon. Bahagari, she says. A ghost appears at Anor's side. Prepare our tools. This one appears touched as well. Bahagari nods and slips away to follow the order. The Striker Titan approaches and snaps his fingers. A stunning bolt of lightning pelts Sola's ghost out of the air into unconsciousness. It's affecting ghosts now too. We should bring them back to the city. This makes 5. He picks up the ghost and shoulders Sola's body before shuffling off to their ship. Aunor turns to follow. 5 and counting, she whispers to herself without taking her eyes off of Sola's ghost. Sola has been busy, though now she's probably only a captive of the Praxic Order. They were founded to keep the darkness and its artifacts out of the hands of the Guardians, so they definitely came down hard on her during this investigation. If Sola is still alive, she's probably being contained by the Praxic Order and re-educated about the darkness. Their version of redemption. Finally, we look into the story of Treston, who we find out is the one that Sola had contacted and agreed to ferry to Europa. In the lore for the weapon, Sola's Scar, we find her on that Arctic moon. Her wait was nearly over. Treston could feel it as she climbed Cadmus Ridge. Sunlight, amplified by snow, pierced her eyes now. She had ascended above the cloud line. She tilted her gaze down, focusing on the crags immediately before her. Her muscles cramped as she reached up for the next ledge. No holding back now. Over the radio, Lord Saladin's voice grew staticky. Cabal incursion. Vex, up ahead. Without a word, Treston's ghost switched it off. There were others nearby to carry out the Iron Lord's orders. He wouldn't miss them. She doubted anyone would, her ex-teammates least of all. She had betrayed them, or so Sadige had screamed. Was supposed to be a thin line drawn before the darkness, you traitor! Thin indeed. So why not step over it? Because they didn't have it in them. She checked. Cracked them both open and dug deep, just to be extra sure. But it wasn't there. That hunger, immense and buried like the ocean under Europa's glacial crust. A riptide, undetectable from the surface, yet unrelenting in its pull. She never meant to betray anyone. She just wanted release. Soon you will have it. Soon you will be freed. Muscles shaking with exhaustion, she threw her hand up and at last grasped snow. She'd reached the top. For a moment, she laid on the embankment, chest heaving. When her vision cleared, she gasped. There it was, blackstone stark against the gleaming white. It seemed to pulse in time with her heart, attuning to the desire churning within. From the back of her mind came a warm, familiar voice. You're a goober. Yara. Suddenly, a different hunger bloomed in her, small and keening. Was it loneliness? It is weakness. What lies before you is power. The pulsing intensified. She could feel the blood pumping through her veins as she stepped towards the obelisk, hand outstretched. She'd never been so close, not one more step. A new voice called out to Tristan. Only this one was not in her head. She turned to find a warlock standing a few yards away, sword drawn. You must be Tristan. I am Aunor. I encourage you to come with me. Quietly. Tristan looked at her, then dove for the obelisk. The last thing she felt was steel. Pure cold steel, piercing through her heart. And that, I believe, is where Sola's story ends. We can see that there's a bit of corruption that's starting to weed its way through the community of Guardians that protects the tower. But that's all we know for now. So thank you for joining me today. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and remember that the best way to let me know you enjoy my content is to leave a like on the video or a comment down below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.